The Pfaff-Creative 7550, the ultimate technology for the ultimate creativity. With your Pfaff-Creative 7550 and your imagination, you can create your own very special brand of sewing magic. The magic is at your fingertips.
Hello, I'm Philip Pepper and this is Kathy Wilkinson. We're part of the educational staff at Pfaff. We'd like to welcome you to the exciting world of the incredibly versatile Pfaff-Creative 7550.
We'll show you the basics about your machine, then build on them using some of the pre-programmed stitches and mixing them in memory with the multi-directional feed to create new stitches and designs. I've got some great basic sewing tips to show you.
And I'll share with you my embroidery techniques, Kathy. I'll also show you how to get the most out of the standard accessory feet that come with your machine.
I can't wait. Let's get started, Philip. It's time to thread up.
Thread, that's a great place to start. There are so many more types of thread available to us than ever before. A little thread and needle knowledge is a great place to start. Always match your needle size to your thread size. This prevents fraying and breaking of your thread. For basic and utility sewing on a medium weight fabric with all-purpose thread, choose a universal number 80 needle. If your fabric is heavier, go up in size to a 90 or 100. If it's lighter in weight, go down in size to a 70 or even a very fine size 60. This is a good rule of thumb, but there are always exceptions.
Yes, there are. When I'm sewing on a densely woven silk or one of the washed silks, I use a size 70 jeans needle or one of the new Microtex needles. The jeans needle is very sharp and will pierce the fabric weave. The Microtex is also very sharp, but it has been designed especially for sewing on the new microfiber fabrics. Anytime you have a problem with skipped stitches on a woven fabric and you know you're using a new needle, change to a jeans needle in a matching size. Bent, burred, or worn needles are the cause of poor stitch quality and broken or shredded threads. Be sure to change your needle frequently. I always use a new needle for a new project. If I've sewn a lot of embroidery or used a lot of maxi-stitches, I put a new needle in the machine to construct the garment.
And there are many specialty needles too, like this twin needle we use for the blouse. We'll discuss them as we use them throughout this video and in Volume 2. And we'll also be using some specialty threads like these. This is Mez Alcazar, a 100% rayon embroidery thread. Mez also makes a 100% polyester embroidery thread and these terrific metallics. Madeira makes an opaline metallic called Super Twist and a heavy unspun rayon to use in the bobbin called Decorative. YLI Company makes wonderful silk thread and ribbon along with nylon monofilament, a pearl crown rayon for the bobbin, and tons more. And let me not forget good old Coates & Clark. Their line of dual-duty thread covers everything from all-purpose to machine embroidery to serger threads.
These are all beautiful, Philip. I can't wait to use them. So let's go to the machine. Place the thread on the spool pin. Secure it with one of the unreeling discs. Match the size of the unreeling disc to the size of the spool. There is one exception though. When the spool is notched, like this Coates & Clark dual duty is, always use the large unreeling disc. Bring the thread around the groove, down through the tension disc on either side, underneath that groove, and back up through the take-up lever. Down to one of the guides, just above the needle, and again, either side is okay, and through the needle itself. Now that was so fast, I'll do that again, because I'm sure you'd like to see the needle threader work. We take our thread over to the left and hook it. Bring the needle threader down and forward, and there's a little hook that comes through the eye of the needle. Hook your thread, and it pulls it right through the eye of the needle. It's that easy. Philip, why don't you show us how to wind a bobbin next?
There are two ways to wind a bobbin on your Creative 7550. For either method, you first need to place a bobbin on the bobbin winder. Now bring the thread from the spool into the silver guide, down under the tension disc, and over to the bobbin. Wrap the thread tightly around the bobbin several times and push it to the right. Make sure you disengage the hand wheel by holding the large outer wheel and turning the small inner wheel counterclockwise. Now just press the foot control. The bobbin will stop winding automatically when it's full. Push the bobbin to the left, clip the thread, and you're set to go. Don't forget to re-engage the hand wheel. To engage the hand wheel, just reverse the procedure. Hold the large outer wheel and turn the small inner wheel clockwise. A good habit to learn now is to turn the hand wheel counterclockwise or toward you until you hear the sewing mechanism engage. You'll hear a definite click. The second way to wind a bobbin is to use the second spool pin while you're sewing. Take the thread from the spool in the path and over to the bobbin. To insert the bobbin into the case, hold it so the thread winds clockwise like this. Remove the bobbin case from the machine. Place the bobbin into the case, and when you pull the thread up, the bobbin should turn clockwise like this. Place the bobbin case onto the pin until you hear a click. Take one stitch and bring the bobbin thread up. An easy way to do this is to select program 00 and engage the single pattern key. The machine will automatically take one stitch and stop. But before we go further, I'd like to explain all the keys and their functions. I'll start with the keys over the needle. Then Kathy will explain the group of keys on the right side of the machine. Above and to the right of the needle is a blue square with two lights in it. The bottom green light works with the reverse key. The reverse key is the large blue key to the right of the needle. It has two functions. When you press the key and the light is lit, the machine will sew constantly in reverse until you press the key again. The light then goes out. If you touch and hold the key while sewing, the machine will sew in reverse only as long as you hold the key down. The light will not be lit. The second function is to determine and memorize the length of darning programs number 28 and 29. We'll show you the darning stitches a little later. The red light at the top of the blue square is the bobbin monitor. It will flash when you're running out of thread. The thread weight will determine the yardage remaining. For example, the light flashes when there is about 3 yards of all-purpose thread remaining. A little less thread remains when you're using a heavier thread like buttonhole twist. A little more thread remains when you're using a lightweight machine embroidery thread. The first pink key on the left is the twin needle key. Its symbol is 2 needles. When this key is engaged, it reduces the stitch width by 2 millimeters. This change in the width does not show in the stitch width display. Here too, a light reminds you that you have engaged the key. The next key is the sew slow key. Its symbol is a triangle dividing a circle. When you press this key, the light is lit and the machine sews at half speed. Press again and return to full speed ahead. The light goes out. The machine always sews maxi monograms, maxi-stitches, and buttonholes at half speed. So engaging the key will have no effect on the speed when sewing these stitches. The third key is the needle up, needle down. Press the key and the light is lit. Now every time you stop, the needle will remain in the fabric. To raise the needle out of the fabric, just press the key again. The light goes out and the needle raises out of the fabric to its highest position. The last key is the tie-off key. The tie-off key function can be used with utility and decorative sewing. Press the key before you start to sew and the light is lit. The machine automatically takes several stitches to knot and then sews the selected stitch program. If you press the key while you're sewing, the machine finishes the stitch program, ties off, and stops. This is great when you want to secure the ends of seams or tie off at the end of a row of decorative stitching. I've finished the explanation of the keys over the needle, so Kathy, why don't you take it from here?
Okay, Philip. I like to think of the keys on the right of the machine as control center. At the top of control center is an LCD display screen that reflects the function of each key as you engage it. The keys allow you to select stitches, change them, put them in memory, sew one, mirror image it, and more. Control Center even suggests presser feet tension, and more. When you turn the machine on, the display shows the first screen of the utility stitch menu. The menu consists of icons of all the built-in stitches. An icon is just another word for a picture or a symbol. The stitches are grouped into categories. All the categories, with all the stitches they contain, are shown on the lid of the machine for easy reference. Before I explain all the keys and their functions, I'm going to show you the 3 ways to select stitch programs. The first way is to use the blue cursor keys to the right of the display screen. The top 2 with the arrows are the cursor keys. They are used for advancing to the next menu screen or returning to the previous menu screen. It's just like turning pages in a book. Press the arrow right cursor key to turn to the next page. Press again and again. Press the left arrow key to go to the previous page, and again until you are at the screen you want. These keys are also used for adjusting the reverse balance of the stitch, and I'll explain about balance a little later on. The bottom blue key is the escape key. It will return you to the previous screen. The previous screen will not necessarily be a menu screen. The escape key also lets you abort a function or a command. Using the cursor keys, move through the menu until you are at the screen with the stitch you want to sew. Below the display is a row of 10 gray keys. These are the numbered keys. They are labeled from 1 to 0. The only time the numbers are used is when you are selecting a stitch program by its number designation and selecting buttonhole sizes. All other times, they are referred to as the key below a specific icon in the screen. For example, if I want to select the blind hem program number 4, I need to press the key below the icon of the blind hem stitch. It happens to be key number 5. Notice that the blind hem icon is now highlighted in black. I can sew a blind hem now using the default settings of the machine. Default settings are the pre-programmed optimum length, width, and density settings of a stitch. These, of course, can be changed. To change the default settings, press the key below the pattern icon again. The screen changes to the programming screen. It is at this screen that you can change the default settings. The second way to select a program is by categories or groups. To see the group menu, press the gray key labeled 0 to 9. Then press the green info key. The list of group choices is shown on the screen. Press the corresponding number key for the group. I'll choose Borders number 8. Now you can use the cursor keys to scroll through the border group and select the stitch. The third way to select a program is by number. Press the 0 to 9 key. Enter the number using the numbered keys. I want the blind hem stitch again, so I'll enter 4. Now press the green OK key. The stitch immediately comes up at the programming screen. At the top of the programming screen is a continuous picture of the stitch. To the right is the program number, which is 4. At the bottom left is a highlighted length icon with the current length setting 2.5 next to it. Below this is a bar with the length option boxes. It's here on the bar where you can change the length. The highlighted setting is the default. In this case, it's 2.5 millimeters. The highlight in the bar does not change as you change the length. Only the number next to the length icon changes. Here, press the key below the box labeled 1.5. The length is decreased to 1.5 millimeters. Press the key below the box labeled 4.0. The length is increased to 4 millimeters. The lengths in the boxes are just some of the more common or useful settings. If you want something in between these settings, you can use the keys below the greater than and less than icons. They are the arrows located on either side of the bar. Press the key below the less than icon and you can reduce the length by 0.5 millimeter increments. Press the key below the greater than icon and increase the length by 0.5 millimeters. We have been changing the stitch length, but in some cases the length bar will refer to the pattern length. Let's pause for a minute to discuss the difference between stitch length and pattern length. Stitch length is the distance between two stitches. A straight stitch with a 3 mm length would have 3 mm between each stitch. The same holds true for the next example, a zigzag stitch with 3 mm between each zig and zag. The next is an example of a pattern length with program number 126, a fern. Notice the different sizes of ferns. Pattern length refers to the overall length of one single pattern and not the distance between individual stitches within that pattern. The first fern is size 45, the middle fern is size 25, and the last fern is size 16. Let's look at the screen. Press the 0 to 9 key and enter program number 126. Press OK. Press the key below the box labeled 45. The picture in the display changes to match the length you selected. Note that the picture on the screen is not actual size. It is a little larger. Look at the number next to the length icon. It shows 45. Now press the key below the box marked 25. Now press the key below the lesser than icon and keep pressing until the pattern length is 16. See how short the pattern is. To recap, the length bar changes either the stitch length or pattern length. By looking at the length numbers available and the picture of the stitch, you can tell if you're changing stitch length or pattern length. At the lower right of the screen is the width bar. It is set up and works the same as the length bar. This stitch is 9 mm wide. Press the key below the box labeled 6.0. The actual sewing width and the picture of the stitch are reduced. You can increase the width by ½ millimeter increments by using the key below the greater than icon. At the right of the screen is the balance icon. You use the blue cursor keys to adjust the balance of a stitch pattern. When you adjust the balance of a pattern, you're lengthening or shortening only the reverse stitches. The arrow right cursor key lengthens the reverse stitches, thereby shortening the overall pattern length. As I press the arrow right cursor key, the plus number increases and the icon darkens at the top. The arrow left cursor key shortens the reverse stitches, thereby lengthening the pattern. As I press the cursor key, the numbers decrease until I get into the minus range. The icon also changes and gets dark at the bottom. Notice that the picture of the stitch does not reflect any balance changes. Now let's look at an example using program number 84. The first row on the left is sewn without any changes. It's the way the stitch was designed to sew. The center row has had the balance changed to -7. The minus number shortened the reverse stitches. See how much longer and open the pattern is. The right row has had the balance changed to +7. The plus number lengthened the reverse stitches. The pattern is much smaller with close stitching. You can use the balance key to correct the stitching of programs or change the look completely. So now you know two uses for the blue cursor keys: scrolling through the menus and controlling the balance of a stitch program. The cursor keys are also used to change the density of a stitch program. Density refers to the amount and distance apart of stitches in a satin stitch program. It's what gives an embroidery stitch its smooth satiny look. As an example, let's select program number 164, the heart. At the right of the screen is the density icon. It's set at 0.35 millimeters, but it can be changed. Press the arrow left cursor key to increase the density. The picture of the heart reflects the change. The heart gets darker because the machine added extra stitches to fill in the heart shape. The darker the stitch, the denser or closer together the stitching will be. Don't make a stitch too dense or the thread will build up and the stitch will not sew. Press the arrow right cursor key to decrease the density of a stitch. Now change the pattern length by pressing the key below the box labeled 14. Notice that the pattern length changed, but the density stayed the same. Remember, depending on which icon is on the screen, the cursor keys will change the balance or the density of a stitch. Next, I'll explain the colorful semicircle of keys. Some of the keys we have already used, so this will be a recap. The large green key in the center is the OK key. It is used to tell the computer to execute a command. Sometimes the computer will ask you a question. Press the OK key to answer the question with a yes. Starting at the right of the inside semicircle is the first gray key, the 0 to 9 key. This is used to select stitch programs numerically. Press the key, enter the program number using the numbered keys, and press OK. The next key is the blue P key. It accesses the P memories for designing or sewing. We'll show you all about P memories in Volume 2. The next blue key is the M key for accessing M memories. You'll learn more about the M key later in this video. The next blue key is the star key. It accesses the directional stitches. The next blue key is the A to Z key, and that accesses all the alphabets. The last blue key is the menu key. It brings you to the first screen in the menu, the utility stitches. Philip will explain the keys in the outer ring.
Let's start with the gray key on the right, the clear key. It clears wrong numbers when you're selecting a stitch program numerically. You can also use it as a quick way to erase all the P and M memories. To do this, hold the clear key down while turning on the machine. But remember, it clears all P and M memories. Before I continue, I want to bring up program number 180 on the screen. Press 0 through 9 key. Enter 180. Press OK key. There, it will be easier to understand the function of the keys when you can see the changes on the screen. The first pink key is the pattern start key. Notice the symbol. It's a triangle with a line on the top. Touch this key and the machine will go back to the beginning of the stitch. You can even hear and see the needle moving to the beginning position. In programmable stitches, like the darning and buttonhole programs, this key will clear the memory of the memorized size. The next key is the single pattern key. Notice the symbol. It's a triangle with two lines, one pointing to the start and one to the end of a pattern. When you engage this key, the light is lit and the machine will sew one stitch program, one P memory or one M memory sequence. At the end, it always ties off and stops. The key remains engaged and the light lit until you touch it again to disengage it. The next key is the mirror image key. Notice the symbols on the key. At the top is a needle position icon. It looks like an oval with a dot in the middle. The oval represents the needle opening in the foot and the dot represents the needle in center position. This icon shows the orientation of the needle and the foot to the direction the stitch will actually sew. This needle position icon is important to understand since it is used often in the information sewing and programming screens. Below the icon is the same shaded triangle, but with a mirror image that is not shaded. It shows that in the sewing position, the stitch will be flipped left to right. See the direction the stitch flipped on the screen. When this key is engaged, the light is lit. Press the key again to turn the mirror function off. The next key is the axial mirror key. At the top is the needle position icon again. Below the icon is a shaded triangle pointing to the needle position and unshaded mirror image triangle. It shows that in the sewing position, the stitch will be flipped back to front or axial mirrored. Look at the screen and note the direction the stitch flipped. It also has a light that remains lit until you press the key again. The remaining green key is the info key. Just like the name implies, it gives you information and help. When you have a stitch program selected, it shows sewing information. The first box on the left indicates the start and end of the stitch. A is the start and E is the end. The next box happens to be empty for this stitch. So let me select another example, an heirloom stitch. First, press Escape. Then press 0 to 9. Enter 119, press OK, press Info again. The box advises to use a wing needle for better results. There would be different information for buttonholes, cross stitch, and maxi stitches. The next box suggests a foot to use and shows an icon of the foot. Above the foot icon is the feed dog icon. When there are two sets of feed dogs, it means to engage the dual feed. Here it shows only one set of feed dogs and the 2A foot. The next box has the needle position icon at the top. It shows which mirror image keys will work with this stitch. With this stitch, only the left to right mirror function is available. The last box suggests where to set the upper thread tension. The suggestion here is 3 to 5, the normal range. To return to the sewing program screen, press the Escape key. Remember, the Escape key takes you back one screen. Kathy and I have explained all the keys to you. Now I want to show you how to program your Creative for a different language. First, turn your machine off. Press and hold the number 1 key while turning the machine on again. You are presented with a menu with 8 languages. Just press the number key for the language of your choice. I'll stick with English, so I'll press the number 1 key. Your Creative 7550 allows you to enter a 3-letter code to prevent unauthorized use of your machine. This is handy if you have small children around. We all know how they can be. To enter a code, first turn the machine off. Touch and hold the info key while you turn the machine back on. The computer asks you to enter a code and shows 4 stars. The code can only be numerical. Use the numbered keys to enter. I'll enter 7550. If you make a mistake, use the clear key to delete the number and re-enter. When the code is correct, press the OK key. Let's see how the code works. Turn the machine off and back on. Enter the code using the numbered keys. As you enter a correct number, the star changes to a cross. 7, 5, 5, and 0. When they're all correct, you will be presented with 3 options. Press OK to keep the current code and start your sewing. Press Escape to delete the code completely. Press Info if you want to change the code. I'll press Escape to delete the code. It's a good idea to write down your code or use something easy to remember. I forgot my code once and felt foolish about it. I did finally solve the problem. I took the batteries out of the machine for about 2 hours. The machine forgot the code, but it also forgot all of the memories I had entered into it. I had to start from scratch. Also, the machine cannot be serviced without sewing it out. So when you have your machine serviced, either delete the code or give it to the service person. This way you won't lose any of your P or M memories.
Let's talk about Dualfeed and utility stitches. Philip, when do you use Dualfeed?
I use Dualfeed most of the time. The few exceptions would be when I'm embroidering with the built-in stitches or doing some free motion work. For all construction and utility sewing, I engage the Dualfeed. If you've never had a machine with Dualfeed before, this is what we're talking about. It's this elbow just behind the presser foot. To engage the Dualfeed, press down on the elbow like this. To disengage, grasp the Dualfeed with 2 fingers, pull down, then to the back and up. It's that easy. Engage, disengage.
Dualfeed is great when you're matching plaids or stripes. I always use Dualfeed when I sew slippery fabrics like this silky. It eliminates puckers without fussing with the tension. The most used stitch is the straight stitch. Set the machine for program 00 by pressing the menu key and then the key just below the straight stitch. First I'll sew without Dualfeed. Now I'll engage Dualfeed. See? A perfect seam. I'd like to show you how the Dualfeed sews over very thick seams. So I'm going to make a mock flat filled seam with this denim. We'll use our needle down key so I can pivot around the corners. And sew back up the other side. Push the button to raise the needle. And now I'll fold that into thirds. And we'll sew right down the middle again. You see how the Dualfeed just rode right over that thick seam. I use the Dualfeed even when I sew in a zipper. Snap off the presser foot by pushing down on the toes. The zipper foot has 3 projections at the back. These spaces accommodate the Dualfeed and must go to the back. The zipper foot can be attached either to the left or to the right. Place the zipper foot under the sewing foot holder and lower the presser bar until you hear it snap into place. Make sure the projections face the back and the number on the foot can easily be read from the front. Notice the needle position. It's much too far away if this were zipper teeth. The solution is to move the needle. Program 00 is a straight stitch with 19 needle positions. Look at the lower right side of the screen. Instead of a width bar, there is a needle position bar. You have a choice of left, right, or center needle position. You can also use the greater than and lesser than keys to move the needle by half-millimeter increments. See, this way you can move the needle right up to the edge of the foot. Program number 10, a reverse straight stitch, has the same needle position bar, so it can be moved the same way. Press 0 to 9, enter 10, press OK. Here's the needle position bar on the right side of the screen. Move the needle left, right, and center. On the lid, programs 1, a stretch triple straight stitch, and 11, a saddle stitch, have an arrow that points both left and right. When these stitches are selected, the needle will be in the center position and can be moved either left or right using the options in the needle position bar. Let's select program 1. I'll change the foot back to presser foot 0A. Pressing the key below the greater than arrow moves the needle to the right. As I press the stitch width key, watch the needle move across to the right. These programs with multiple needle positions give me the versatility to sew accurate 1/4 inch seams for piecing quilt tops or evenly spaced decorative top stitching. I'll use program 1 with the left needle position to add a second row of stitching on this pocket. See the evenly spaced rows. Because of the triple stitching, this stitch will not only give your top stitching a heavier look, but it will stretch and not snap when sewn on knits. It's that easy.
Before we leave straight stitching, let me show you how to use the number 7 foot, a flat hemmer that came with your machine. This foot needs to have the needle in the center position. See the scroll on the front of the foot? It rolls the fabric up and around to form the hem. The hem is then sewn in place with a straight stitch. So select program 00, center needle position, and snap on the foot. To prepare the fabric for the scroll, fold under 1/8 of an inch one time and again, and finger press for about 1 inch. Engage the needle down, place the fabric under the foot and sew for about 5/8 of an inch. Lift the foot, draw the fold up into the scroll, and continue sewing, guiding the raw edge with your right hand and using the index finger on the left side. Disengage the needle down and remove the fabric. It takes a little practice, but it's well worth the effort. There are two other sizes of hemmers available for your creative. This one is the 2mm hemmer. It's just like the 3mm hemmer that came with your machine. They're both used for fine, lightweight fabrics, like batiste and organdy. This is the 4mm hemmer, and it has a cutout so you can use Dualfeed. This one works well with fine fabrics and also a little bit heavier fabrics like broadcloth and Oxford shirting. All hemmers work best on the straight grain of the fabric, but the 4mm hemmer with Dualfeed will hem a shirt tail if it isn't severely curved. We've all used a zigzag stitch for overcasting seams, appliquing, and even sewing on buttons. Your creative has several types of zigzags, each with its own special use. The most common utility stitches are all grouped together on the stitch chart. They're located here in the menu group at the left of the lid. Program number 2 is the basic zigzag, but this sample was appliqued with program number 16, what we like to call a Zorro stitch.
Let me show you why it has that name. The example on the left has a stitch length of 2 millimeters. When the needle zigs to the right, it makes a perfectly horizontal stitch. When it zags back to the left, it's on an angle. The stitch formation looks like the letter Z. When you shorten the stitch length to 0.6 millimeters, you get a very even satin stitch like the one in the middle. The satin stitch on the right was sewn with program number 2, the basic zigzag. The stitch length had to be shortened much more than the Zorro did, down to 0.3 millimeters. So you're using less thread to get a prettier satin stitch when you use the Zorro stitch.
In addition to these two zigzag programs, there's a third one, program number 32. The big difference between the first two zigzags and program 32 is the way it tapers. Zigzag program number 2 is a centered stitch. By this I mean that when you reduce the width, it will evenly narrow from the center inward. When you increase the width, it will evenly increase from the center outward. Program number 32 is a zigzag that stays constant on either the left or right. Kathy, why don't you show us on the machine?
Fine with me, Philip. I love to satin stitch. I'll select program number 32. Press 0 to 9, enter 32, and press OK. Notice that the needle is in the extreme right position. Watch what happens when I engage the mirror image key. The needle jumps from the right to the left side. I'll sew a bit so you can see how it looks on the fabric. Now I'll disengage the mirror image key, and the needle moves back to the right. You can see the difference between the two sets of stitches. This stitch can also be tapered while you're sewing. It makes beautiful tapered corners. There are several other utility stitches that come under the heading of zigzag stitches. Program number 3 is a triple step zigzag, and program number 15 is a double step zigzag. This means that the zigs and zags are sewn with 2 or 3 stitches. Both of these stitches have a lot of elasticity, so they're great when you're sewing knits or attaching elastic. I'll attach this elastic to this fabric so you can see how these stitches work. I'll select program 3, and I'm going to hold on to my threads in the back just until it clears the Dualfeed. And then I'll just stretch the elastic from the front. You see how beautifully the Dualfeed fed the elastic. The last two utility zigzag stitches are programs number 20, a slanted zigzag, and number 21, a triple slanted zigzag. These can be used to sew seams in fabrics that contain a lot of lycra or spandex. I use them also when I embroider. They make great stems for flowers, as you can see here. This is an embroidery I made using some built-in stitches and the fringe foot. Don't they look great? I'll show you how to use the fringe foot in volume 2. But now back to basics. How about showing us some blind hemming, Philip?
Okay, Kathy. This skirt was hemmed by machine and it looks great. Hemming by machine is quick and easy when you use the blind hem foot, number 3. This adjustable red guide is the key to the invisible hem. There are 2 additional things you need to know in order to sew a perfect blind hem. First is to check the bite of the needle into the fold. Second is the way you fold the fabric. Pin up the hem with the pins on the inside of the garment. The pin should be very close to the fold and parallel to it, like this. Now I'll go to the machine and finish folding and check the bite of the stitch. Fold the hem with the fabric under like this. Make sure you have about 1/4 to 1/2 inch of the hem exposed. This fold is where the needle will take its bite. The fabric is under the presser foot with the fold against the red guide on the foot. To check the bite, use the hand wheel to lower the needle into the fold. If the needle bites too far into the fabric, turn the thumb screw counterclockwise, which will move the red guide to the right. Check the bite again. When you have adjusted it perfectly, the needle will bite into the fold and make a stitch only across 1 thread of the fabric. This is the ideal setting. If you prefer, you can test the bite automatically. Unthread the needle and take 1 stitch with the foot control. This program was designed with the bite as the first stitch, so after you've adjusted the guide and you want to test the bite again, just press the pattern start button and the needle is set to take the bite again. I'll sew a hem in this sample for you. This takes a little practice, so I'll show you another easier method. This is what I call a rolled and whipped hem. It resembles a hand-stitched hem and is a little easier to sew. Prepare your hem the same way as before, but when you turn the hem under, only expose about 1/16 of an inch like this. Adjust the red guide all the way over to the left so it is exactly even when the needle is on the bite stitch. Notice that there isn't any of the hem extending under the metal pin. You will be sewing on air, but don't worry, your creative can do this. It looks like a hand-sewn hem, but the best part comes when you want to change the length of your garment. Snip the stitches that were sewn on air, and there you have it. The hem is undone.
I really like that rolled and whipped hem, Philip. I think it's a great technique. Look at all these knits that I have here. They're so comfortable to wear. It's no wonder they're so popular now. They're so easy to sew also, even if you're not lucky enough to own a hobby lock serger. Your Creative 7550 has several different overlock stitches, so you can choose the one that's perfect for the type of knit you're sewing. They also sew great seams on woven fabrics.
That's right, Kathy. And I'll show you how easy it is to sew ribbing into a t-shirt neckline. First, cut your ribbing according to the pattern piece or the measurements given on the instruction sheet. You can leave the seam allowances the normal 5/8 of an inch and trim them after sewing. I prefer to trim them before I sew. Here I have a piece of rib that has already been seamed together. Now I'll quarter the band and place a pin at each quarter fold, like this. The front and back have already been quartered and pinned. Notice that the shoulder seams may not necessarily be at the quarter marks. Now match the set of pins and pin the ribbing to the neckline. The seam on the ribbing can be at the center back or at the right shoulder. Now let's take it to the machine. Select program 38 and snap on the blind hem foot. The metal pin on this foot will keep the seam from tunneling. As I sew, I'll guide the raw edge against that pin but not under it, and stretch the ribbing to match the neckline. This stitch sews a stretchable seam and overcast it at the same time. It looks very neat from the inside, and look how smooth it looks on the right side. Any of programs 30 through 39 plus programs 6 and 19 will sew a stretchable seam and overcast it at the same time.
That blind hem foot is very versatile. Now I'm going to use a very specialized foot and attachment for a very common sewing job, buttonholes. This is the buttonhole foot number 5A.
And this is the buttonhole guide. It's really a sensor ruler. When it is inserted properly, it activates the buttonhole sensor. The sensor tells the machine when the second bead of the buttonhole is the same length as the first bead. Then the machine sews the second bar tack and ties off. This handy guide will allow you to use the buttonhole foot or foot 1A with the Dualfeed engaged. The first buttonhole Kathy will show will be corded using foot 5A, the buttonhole foot.
That's right, Philip. This is a sliding foot with hooks on the front and the back of the foot for cord. You take a piece of cording about 7 to 8 inches long and fold it in half. We'll take the fold and hook it on the center hook in the back of the foot and bring the tails forward. Put one on the right side and one on the left and make sure they're snug and secure in the foot. You'll get a closer look at the cording while I'm at the machine. See how the hooks hold the cording. I like to use cording to match my thread, and sometimes I can't find the right color. So here's a technique that assures me of the perfect match. Make sure you have the Dualfeed engaged. This is very important. Select program number 2 and change the width to 4 and the length to 2. I'm going to pull out both the needle and the bobbin threads for about 12 inches, pull it a second time and a third. Take all the threads and place them underneath the foot and lower the presser foot. Start sewing and hold the cord in the front and the back until the Dualfeed has a chance to grab the cords. Then continue to hold the cords in the front to keep tension on them. When your cord is long enough, you can hook it to the buttonhole foot. A perfectly matched piece of cording and inexpensive too. If you need a heavier cord, just use more filler thread. Now snap off the standard foot and disengage the Dualfeed. Swing the accessory tray out of the way or remove it entirely. Insert the sensor ruler into the back of the machine. The silver part goes between the 2 arrows on the back of the needle plate, and the beige part slides right over the feed dogs. Do not push the sensor tight against the machine. Leave about a 1/4 inch space between the sensor and the machine. Snap on the buttonhole foot. And be sure the foot is pulled forward like this. Match the arrow to the second red mark. Don't pull it all the way forward. I'll select the buttonhole group. Press the 0 to 9 key and then the info key. Press the key number 2 and select the first style of the buttonhole, which is program 40, a bar tack buttonhole. The bar tack is the most widely used style of buttonhole. This next screen lets me choose either a pre-programmed size or I can make my own size. It even tells me what to do right on the screen if I need additional help. I can see that by pressing the info key. Let's escape back to the buttonhole screen. I'll want to make an 18mm length buttonhole, so I'll enter 18 and press OK. All of the pre-programmed buttonhole styles work the same way. The numbers next to the buttonhole icon represent the length. The black highlighted number is the program number. I can change the width of a buttonhole by pressing the numbered keys below the width icons. I'll leave it at the default setting. Since this is a pre-programmed style, the only thing I have to do is press the foot control. The machine will sew the buttonhole, tie off, and stop. It's that easy. Now I'm going to carefully remove the cords from off of the hooks on the foot. And I have a loop here from the cording, which I'm going to remove by pulling down on one of the tails of the cord. I'll clip the cord ends near the bar tack and then smooth out the buttonhole. Next, I'll program in my own buttonhole size. I'll press the escape key to return to the previous screen. On the bottom of this screen, it says if I OK a length of 0, I can program the length as I sew. To erase the 18 that I entered before, I can just press the clear key twice. The clear key works like a delete or backspace key on a computer. Now I'll press OK. Notice that the length numbers have been replaced by the abbreviated word for program, PROG. The width icons are still there, and to the right of them is the density icon. The programmable style gives you the option of changing the density of the buttonhole beads. I'll make it a little denser by decreasing the number to 0.4 millimeters. I'll place my fabric under the foot and readjust the guide and foot. When I depress the foot control, the machine sews the right bead of the buttonhole towards you. When you reach the length that you want, touch the reverse above the needle. The reverse light will not go on. The machine made the first bar tack. Now it's sewing the second bead in reverse. It will automatically sense the length of the first bead, and when it's even with the first bead, the machine makes the second bar tack and ties off. It's as easy as sewing a pre-programmed buttonhole. After programming the length, the word PROG next to the buttonhole icon changed to auto, indicating that the buttonhole is now in memory and you can make as many as you like. If the size isn't quite right, just press the pattern start key to clear the memory and start again. Remember, the machine automatically makes the second bar tack only when you are using the sensor ruler. If you don't want to use the sensor ruler, you will need to tell the machine where to put the second bar tack by pressing the reverse key when the two beads are even. It will then bar tack, tie off, and stop. You can also cancel the second bar tack on any buttonhole, whether it's pre-programmed or your own custom size. I'll use a keyhole buttonhole program to demonstrate. Press the escape key twice to go back to the buttonhole style screen. Select a keyhole buttonhole, and the length is 22 millimeters. I'll change it to 25. Press the clear key to erase the 2, and I'll enter a 5, and then press OK. To the right of the width icon is the manual icon. Press the key below the manual icon to cancel the last bar tack. In the middle of the screen is a note telling you that you have to finish the buttonhole manually. The machine will sew the right bead. Then the first bar tack, or in this case, the keyhole part. It then slows its speed, so you have a chance to determine where the second bar tack should be. And then press the reverse key. It then bar tacks and ties off. The manual command stays selected until you press the key to turn the function off or until you escape from the buttonhole program. But don't just think of buttonholes as purely functional. Look at this vest. I've used buttonholes to create a unique look. Some of the buttonholes are corded with the tails left to dangle. Some I've sewn on a rectangle of sheer fabric, and some are just plain.
And this is a great way to turn your practice piece into something pretty. You could add buttons also. Let's go to the machine and I'll sew on some buttons. Select Program 9. Press 09 key, enter 9, and press OK. The pre-selected width is 4 millimeters. This is the common distance between the two holes in any button. If your button is of an unusual size, you will need to check the needle swing manually. Notice that the light above the pattern key is lit. This means that the machine will sew one complete program. First it ties off in the left needle position, zigzags across the two holes, then ties off and stops, and you're ready for the next button. You can use foot 2A or no foot at all like I'm doing. You do not have to lower the feed dog since the machine has programmed them not to feed the fabric at all. It's just that easy. If you're sewing a button on a coat or blazer, you might want to have a thread shank on the button. I like to use an old needle for this. Place the needle between the holes and under the sewing foot holder. Sometimes a little piece of Scotch tape can help hold everything in place. Now just sew on the button. Leave the tails long and wind them around the thread shank. Then you can thread them onto a hand needle and secure them from the wrong side. That vest certainly does take the ordinary and make it into something special. And this belt does the same thing.
It looks like a brocade fabric, Philip.
Doesn't it? But it's not, Kathy. It's plain ivory chintz, threads and built-in stitches. This stitch right here is another example of a utility stitch used decoratively. This is the first half of the darning program number 29. I'll show you how the darning stitch can be programmed and then how I made this fabric.
Great. I'm always interested in new ways to use stitches.
The two darning programs number 28 and 29 are both programmed in the same way. I'll select program number 29. Press 09 key, enter 2, 9, and press OK. Press the info key. It tells me that my tension needs to be set at 3, and I'll snap on foot number 2, just the way the built-in instruction book recommends. Now press escape. Now I'll place my fabric under the foot and start sewing. The machine sews with tiny stitches from the left straight across to the right. Takes one stitch forward, then stitches back across to the left, and takes that one stitch forward again. Now it repeats this sequence for as long as I want. When I reach the length I want, I press the reverse key over the needle. Now the machine will sew backwards and forwards until it covers the previous stitching. It then ties off and stops. When I stitched the belt, I wanted a heavy fabric feel, so I've used a non-woven iron-on interfacing on the back of the chintz. This also stabilized the fabric so that I could embroidery on it. The trick is to only use the first half of the darning stitch. Don't touch the reverse key. Let's take a closer look at these stitches. The first stitch on the left is program number 29, sewn as you would for darning. The next one is program 29 without the reverse stitching, the way it was used on the belt. The last stitch is the other darning program, program number 28. Notice the differences. The darning stitch on the right only sews backward and forward, whereas the one on the left sews left to right also. Next we'll show you about alphabets.
I like the way you've used a utility stitch and turned it into a decorative one, Philip. And I thought I was being so clever with the buttonhole vest. I guess we're on the same wavelength, and I hope you try these ideas on your Pfaff. It'll make learning about your new machine more fun. And continuing with learning, how about a spelling lesson, Philip?
The spelling lesson doesn't sound too exciting, but if you mean with the creative, it could only be fun. So teach away, Kathy.
This vest is called My Favorite Things. I wrote all over the vest with things that mean something to me, like books and sayings, songs and friends. I used all the outline alphabet style in a random pattern, much similar to the way the belt was made. The alphabets do not have program numbers. They are selected by their icons. The alphabet styles are accessed by pressing the A to Z key.
Then you can choose any style of alphabet you want, Kathy. I think it's time for you to go to the machine for that spelling lesson.
Press the A to Z key and the alphabet styles are shown. I could select a style now and sew it, but it's easier to put the words directly into an M memory than it is to sew each individual letter. So first I'll show you how to enter a name into an M memory. First I need to select an empty M memory by pressing the M key. The screen changes to display the M memory directory. The two dashes next to the memory mean the memory is empty. If a memory is occupied, it will display the total number of stitches in the sequence next to the memory. To select an empty M memory, use the key below the plus or minus icon. These keys move the cursor and highlight each memory in turn. When you reach an empty memory, press OK. There, we're ready to enter any combination we wish. The next thing you have to do is tell the machine which program you want to enter. You do this by touching either the 0 to 9 key or a stitch program, the P key for an original design, the star key for directional stitches, or the A to Z key for alphabets. Since I want to write something, I need to press the A to Z key. I want to use the block letters to enter my name, so I'll press the key below the block style icon. This is the alphabet screen. It looks the same for all of the alphabet styles. It has a lot of information on it. The blank box at the top is the text box. The text box is where the letters you choose will be displayed. Below the box are the letters and numbers. You use the keys below each group to move the cursor and highlight the letter you want, like this. On the right at the top is a note reminding you which M memory is open. In this case, it's M0. Below that is the current width setting. To change the width, press the key below the width icon. The screen changes. Press the key below the icon for the size you want. The block alphabet defaults to a 7 millimeter width. Let's change it to 9 millimeters and press OK. Remember to change the size of an alphabet before you select a letter. Changing it after selecting a letter will have no effect on the size. I'll program my name. The K is in the second column, so I need to use the key below. Follow the arrow down to the key and press the key through that group until it highlights the K. Now press OK. It's now displayed in the text box and the cursor has moved to the right. I'll enter in the rest of my name. A, OK, T, OK, H, OK, and Y, OK. Now press the M key to return to the M memory. You can tell by the screen that we're still in the programming mode. At the bottom of the screen are icons. Starting at the left are the home and end icons. The home icon is an arrow pointing to the left and it will move the cursor to the beginning of the sequence. The cursor is the vertical line of dashes. See the cursor move? The end icon points to the right and will move the cursor to the end of the sequence. It's a quick way to move around in the sequence. You can also move the cursor with the blue cursor keys. I'll press the arrow right cursor key and move the cursor between the T and the H. The next symbol, M-, indicates that the following two icons will erase or delete something in the sequence. The line with the dots and the arrow pointing between them will delete the stitch program after the cursor position. But if the cursor is at the end, it will delete the last stitch program in the sequence. The next icon is an empty box. Pressing the key below this icon will delete the entire sequence. The next icon has a question mark inside a box. Pressing the key below it will give you an information screen. Let me quickly explain the information screen to you. At the left of the box is the icon for the needle position. Remember, it is the same icon on the mirror keys. It shows the position of the needle and the foot when sewing the sequence. The line running along the length of the box represents the sequence. In the center, above and below the line, are dashes. These dashes represent the cursor. Above the line, on either side of the cursor, are numbers. These numbers show the current cursor position. Right now, the cursor is between the third and fourth stitches in the sequence. Just below the numbers are more dashes. The dashes on either side of the cursor represent alphabet stitch programs. If we had used numerical programs, those numbers would be shown here. The number on the right tells you the total number of stitches in the program. When you use other stitch programs, such as a Maxi-Stitch, you will get additional information. You'll see an example of this when we use the directional stitches later. Press the Escape key to return to the previous screen. The last icon is the sewing machine. Press the key below it and you exit the programming mode. I only want to sew my name once, so I'll engage the single pattern key. That looks great. All the connecting threads need to be clipped for a neater look.
Kathy, why go to all the bother to clip threads in between, say the outline alphabet?
I like the way the letters look when they're separate, and it makes them much easier to read. I didn't clip the threads in the vest, however. Instead, I chose to embroider a decorative stitch right on top of the connecting stitches. It hid the connecting stitches and added a decorative spacing to the overall look of the vest. It gave it more of the tapestry look that I wanted.
I'd like to show you how you can enter programs quicker using the CD. It's literally point and touch entering, so I'll take over the spelling lesson from here. Connect the CD to the port on the sewing machine. If your machine is turned on, turn it off first. Insert the CD plug into the port on the left side of the machine, just below the accessory box. Turn your machine on and open an M memory. I have selected M1. Press the A to Z key. Press the key below the outline alphabet. Move the magnifier slide to the upper left. The A is highlighted. Move the magnifier slide to the right across the top of the Creative Designer. Notice as you move to the right, each letter in the top row is highlighted. Move the slide to the bottom of the Creative Designer and move the slide along the bottom to the left. As you move, each letter in the bottom row is highlighted. Let's enter Pfaff-7550. Move the slide and highlight the letter P. Press the M+ key one time. Now select F and press the M+ key one time. A and M+. Back to F one time and again. And now to the numbers. 7 and M+ one time. 5 and M+ one time. And again. And to 0 and M+ one time. Press the M key to go to the memory. Since we're still in a programming mode, I think I'll add some flowers at either end of the sequence. I want to use program number 180, so I'll press the 09 key, 180, and OK. Press OK again to enter into the memory. I would rather have the flower facing the other way, so first I'll delete it by pressing the key below the delete at cursor icon. Here, it's gone. Now I press Escape to go back to the flower. This is a quick way to return to the screen of the last program entered. Press the axial mirror key and OK. That looks much better. To balance the sequence, I'm going to put another flower in front of the writing. I'll press the Home key to move the cursor to the beginning of the sequence. Good. Press Escape to return to the last program entered, the flower. Press OK to enter it. There it is. Let's sew this out and see how it looks. First, press the sewing machine key and the single pattern key. Now we're ready to sew. There. The same results as Kathy, but a quicker way to enter alphabets. The choice is up to you. So Kathy, what do you have there? Some ideas on where to use the alphabet?
I sure do, Philip. This is the skirt that we showed earlier. I put an elastic waist in for comfort, but it's difficult to tell the front from the back. So I solved that by sewing the word front into the waistband right at center front. This is a good idea for all elastic waisted skirts and pants.
Going back to the vest, did you prepare that the same way I did the belt?
I sure did. I ironed a non-woven interfacing to the back of the fabric to stabilize it. But then, instead of using only embroidery stitches, I wrote sayings with the outline style alphabet. Here's a handkerchief that I personalized by centering my monogram inside of a medallion. This time I used freezer paper for a stabilizer. You can buy it at any supermarket. Iron it on the back with a medium hot dry iron. When your embroidery is complete, just tear it away from the back. It's always a good idea to test the stabilizer on scraps of fabric before you try it on your project. Let's go to the machine so you can see exactly how I did it. I've already sewn the border and programmed my initials into an M memory. This time I selected a dot or a period to be sewn between each letter instead of a space. I've marked the starting point with a marker, and that's where I'll place the needle. I would gently remove the freezer paper first, then clip the connecting threads, and voila! Let's see what monogram ideas Philip has. Philip, is that another sample you have to show us?
Yes, it is, Kathy. It's an old-fashioned tea towel, but today it could be used to cover a basket of bread or used as a table accent. I've done some embroidery and put a Maxi monogram to personalize it. The Maxi monograms are accessed by the A to Z key. I used a template to mark the letter exactly where I wanted it. I've already found the center and marked it. Place the template on the fabric and move it around a little until you're satisfied with the placement. Place a dot at the beginning. I like to sew one letter before I mark the next one.
You should always use a stabilizer when you're embroidering. What type of stabilizer did you use for the monogram?
I like to use a lightweight stitch and tear. It also tears away from the completed embroidery like the freezer paper. You can buy it at your local fabric shop. I'll pin the stabilizer to the back of the fabric and go to the machine to do the embroidery work. Press the A to Z key. The Maxi monogram is the last alphabet on the right. I'm going to select the letters manually, but I also could use the Creative Designer. Press the key below the Maxi letter. Notice that the single pattern key is lit. The Maxi monograms can only be sewn as a single pattern and cannot be put into an in-memory. I'll manually lower the needle into the mark I made. Adjust the fabric so the monogram will be sewn straight and just begin to sew. Now I can make the mark for the next placement. This is the way I like it, so my next mark will be here. Drop the needle and adjust the fabric the same way as before, and this gives you a very professional look.
Philip, this tea towel is beautiful. How did you do it? I recognize Maxi program number 208 that should be used for the wreath.
I drew a circle onto the square of linen. Then I used the template to angle the first set of leaves and I marked the first one. Then I sewed leaves around my line. Let me show you how. Engage the single pattern and needle down keys. Here's the marks for the next set of leaves. Lower the needle into the mark and sew. When the machine comes to a full stop, lift the presser foot and angle the next set of leaves. I've already changed the needle thread to a pastel for the flowers and put foot number 2A on. I'll use program number 136. Press 09, 136, and OK. I'll also engage the single pattern key. I'm going to randomly place the flowers. I don't have to stop and cut the threads for each flower as long as I hold on to the needle threads. Watch as I move from place to place. Now I can go back and clip all the threads. You can also sew flowers with programs number 132, 135, and 137. Try some of the stitches that look like stars also. Let's show how we do twin needle embroidery.
It's easier to do any embroidery or applique on a piece of fabric and then make it into a garment or other project. So that's what I did. I drew my guidelines onto the fabric square. I used a 1.6 twin needle. The 1.6 means that the needles have a 1.6 millimeter space between them. This is the narrowest twin needle available. If you use a wider space twin needle, like a 2.0 millimeter one, you must engage the twin needle key. This is a safety precaution so you won't break a needle, damage the foot, or the needle plate.
Threading twin needles is a little different than threading a single needle. Kathy, I'll let you do the honors on this one.
Well, I'm off to the machine. To thread the machine for twin needle sewing, pull up the extra spool holder and put the second spool on it. I like to thread each spool separately because it prevents them from tangling together. Take one of the threads and bring it around the left side of the tension disc and then down through the left guide above the needle. Then take the other thread and put it through the right side of the tension disc and through the right guide above the needle. You'll have to manually thread each needle since the automatic needle threader will go between the needles now. Threading this way keeps me on my toes. Let's see how a twin needle scallop looks. I'll select program number 201, so I'll press the 0 to 9, enter 201, and press OK. I've engaged my single pattern key and my twin needle key. See the subtle shading that the two colors give the stitch. While we're on specialty needles, I want to show you this teddy. These Maxi-Stitches were sewn with metallic thread like this. Sometimes metallic threads can cause problems and frustrations. I've found from experience that if I use a top stitch or a metafill needle, I can eliminate any problems. Top stitch needles have a longer eye than a standard needle to accommodate a heavier thread and are available in sizes 80 to 110. Metafill needles are very new and have been designed especially for metallic threads. They have a deeper groove in the front of the needle, and the eye is not only larger, but Teflon coated to allow the metallic thread to slide easily through it. Metafill needles are available in size 80 only. I'll select program number 206. So we'll press 0 to 9, enter 206, and press OK. I have engaged the single pattern key. Remember to sew slowly when using metallic threads. And there you have it. The gold embroidery on black is really striking. Using only one color thread, but a strong color, such as gold or silver, can add a touch of the dramatic to any outfit.
That's right, Kathy. I think everyone should do more embroidery with the Creative. It's so much fun to see the fabric change right before your eyes, and the results can be dramatic.
Okay, Philip, what did you have in mind?
I'd like to show you this jacket with Maxi-Stitches. I designed it for an advertisement for the Creative 7550. Maybe you remember it.
Oh, yes, I do remember it very well. It's so elegant. I love the way the Maxi-Stitches give the feeling of a silk brocade fabric. Did you use anything special to embroider the fabric?
Yes, I did. I used a tearaway stabilizer under the silk. The fabric was cut a little larger than the pattern piece so that after embroidering I had a little leeway with placement. But other than that, I treated the embroidered fabric exactly the same as any other printed or woven fabric. Here I used Maxi-Stitch 218, the Lily program.
The lilies look a little different than the flowers I just sewed. You must have done something different. A little trick, maybe?
Yes, I wanted a heavy brocade look and feel to the fabric. I did something very simple. I used 2 strands of gold metallic thread through the needle.
Oh, I can see the 2 threads. What needle did you use?
Because of the double thickness of the thread, I had to use a top stitch needle. I needed a larger eye. I also needed a larger size needle. I used a size 100 top stitch needle, and it worked perfect. I treated both threads as if they were one. I put them both on the same side of the tension disc. I did lower the tension a little bit more than usual.
Tell us the stitches that you used on the sleeves.
For the sleeves, I used rayon machine embroidery thread to sew the dots, program number 165. I altered rows of dots with a row of the saddle stitch, program number 11, sewn in gold. I united this look on the jacket fronts by filling in the spaces between the lilies with various 9mm stitches. Here's number 165 in the center of the lilies, and here again in gold. Here's 65, a diamond in gold, and here's number 124, leaves in rayon.
It really is very striking and elegant.
This blouse makes wonderful use of the multi-directional feed stitches. We combine program number 52, a scallop, and directional stitching to form a simple but very effective border design. I'll give you the M memory program. Enter it along with me. Press the M key and open an M memory. Press OK. Press the 09 key and enter program number 52. And press OK. Now press OK again to enter it once. Press the star key for the directional stitch programs. Remember which way the stitches are orientated to the actual sewing. The foot is here at the left. So the first stitch that points upwards is actually going to sew to the right. If you think of the sewing direction as compass points, it would sew east. To make this easy, I'll tell you the compass direction it will actually sew, and then I'll tell you which to select by the number on the key. We want to sew east, so press the number 1 key. Look at the screen. It has the needle orientation icon in front of the stitches right here. This icon is shown for directional stitch. We want this stitch in memory, so press the OK key. We switch to the memory and 1 stitch is already entered once, but I want 3 stitches, so I need to press OK 2 more times. Press the star key for directional stitches. Now I want to go northwest. Press key number 6. I want to use the second angle, so I'll press the 0 key to move the cursor and highlight it. Press OK. 1 is entered and I need 9 more. Press the 0 to 9 key. Enter 52 and press OK. Press OK 1 more time. Press the star key for directional stitches. Now I want to go southwest. Press key number 7. I want to use the second angle. Press the 0 key to move the cursor and highlight it and press OK. 1 is entered and I need 9 more. Press the star key. I want to go south. Press key number 2 and press OK. 1 is entered and I need 2 more. We should have 28 stitches in our sequence, so let's check it. Press the question mark key. Yes, it shows a total of 28 stitches here at the right. Press escape. Well, let's sew it out. Press the key below the sewing machine icon. I've loosened my needle thread tension, and be sure to snap on foot number 8 for directional sewing. Now everything is set and I can sew. Just look how easy that is to create a whole new border. Combining a double row of scallops that can be sewn in one row saves a lot of time. You don't have to carefully match the second row to the first. It's done automatically, just by using directional stitches in an M memory.
I love the way using directional stitches changes the look of the stitch. I have a vest here that has another 8-way feed design. It's a totally different look using green ombre thread on white chintz.
That's really pretty, Kathy. Can you tell us how you did it?
I marked the fronts on a piece of fabric that was about 1 inch larger all around than the pattern. I ironed on a medium weight interfacing and also used tearaway stabilizer. The combination of stitch number 205 and directional stitches is very simple. Let's go to the machine and I'll show you how to enter the M-memory sequence. Press the M key and open an M-memory. Press OK. Now press the 0 to 9 key and enter 205. And press OK. Now press OK again to enter one stitch. Press the star key for the directional stitch programs. Remember to check which way the stitches are orientated to the actual sewing. I want to sew in reverse in the middle of the triangle. It needs a north direction, so I need to press key number 4. I want the longer stitch, so I'll just press the OK key. Remember, 1 is already entered into the memory. I need to enter 19 more. I should have a total of 21 stitches. Let's check. Press the question mark key. Good, 21 stitches in the sequence. Press escape. I'll sew a little for you to see how it looks. Doesn't that look great? Try the same method with some of the other stitches, such as the Maxi Scallop number 201 and the Maxi Chevron number 207. I've even used this idea of reverse sewing to the center of a stitch on some of the 9mm stitches with great results. The other stitches in the border are program number 75, sewn right on top of the directional row. Next is program number 74, and again program 75. The last row is a little trick. It's program number 76 at a 6mm width using the 1.6mm twin needle that we showed you earlier.
You know, Kathy, we've done quite a bit of sewing with this machine today. I know that the machine could use a bit of cleaning and oiling.
You're right. Taking the proper care of your machine will give you better performance and stitch quality. And since you mentioned it first, Philip, I'll let you do the honors.
Well, thanks a lot, Kathy. To clean the machine, you can use the brush that came with it, like the white one, or a cosmetic brush. I use both types. Open the cover and drop the feed dogs. This makes it a little easier to take off the needle plate. Now tilt the needle plate up at the back and remove it. Clean the feed dogs. Make sure you remove the lint between the teeth. Now remove the bobbin case, and with a soft brush, clean all the lint from the hook area. Be especially careful to gently brush the lint from the thread sensor monitor. I also take a look at the inside of the bobbin case because lint can build up there too. Now you can oil the hook raceway. Just place a drop here. You should oil your machine about every 10 hours of actual sewing time. To replace the needle plate, place the back down first. Then press down until you hear the clip snap into place. And don't forget to raise your feed dogs. And that's all there is to it.
Well, Philip, our time is just about up for this volume. I know you've learned to use your Creative 7550, and I hope we've inspired you to experiment with all the possibilities that the machine offers.
I think that we did, Kathy. I know that we both had fun showing all the techniques in this video. We'll have more advanced techniques to show you in Volume 2.
Especially how to trace and touch your own designs. So until then, bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.